certainly was not a stellar first half of the season for the Baltimore Orioles, but there's still some awards to be given out nonetheless. And we'll do that coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' blowout loss to the Texas Rangers on Tuesday night, talk about what went right in that one as Brandon Young started to show some promise, what went wrong in the Oriole bullpen, and a shout out to somebody who is at least swinging the bat really well for the Orioles right now. Then we will discuss the roster moves that the Orioles made on Tuesday. There were a few of them, plus some injury updates and notes to get to. And then finally, at the end of the show, the Orioles 2025 first half awards. We'll give out some individual honors to the team MVP, reliever of the year, that good stuff, and look back on some of the best and worst games and moments from the first 81 the Orioles have played here in 2025. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So we'll start today's episode with an Orioles loss. Now, as I'm recording here just shy of 11 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday night, the game has technically not gone final, although it is 10-2 Rangers with one out in the top of the ninth inning. So I'm feeling pretty certain the Orioles are going to lose this game. So let's give you the recap of it. Won't be too long. Wasn't a great one, but let's start with what went right in this one for the Orioles. What went right was, I thought Brandon Young, who came up to start this game, at least showed some more signs. He looked better in this start. There is certainly still a lot for him to work on. He's made 4 big league starts and still has not even completed 5 innings in any of the 4 of them, but he is showing improvements in this one, as he has shown in a couple other starts this year. I thought both the 4-seam fastball and the curveball from the rookie right-hander were really good on Tuesday. And, the curveball is a pitch he's used time to time in big spots in AAA, and even though it was his number 2 most used pitch in his first 3 starts, he was really using it as more of a get me over called strike pitch instead of attacking hitters with it. I thought he attacked more with the curveball, used it more as a weapon on Tuesday, and guys had really been sitting on that pitch in his first 3 starts. Coming into Tuesday in the majors this year, opponents were hitting .400 against Young's curveball, and he had just a 6% swing and miss rate against that pitch. That's pretty abysmal for your go-to breaking ball. But I just thought he commanded that pitch later in counts so much better on Tuesday than he had in the past. That allowed him to get some swing and miss on that. He actually had a big strikeout of Adolis Garcia with a front door curveball early in the game, which was nice to see. And with the 4-seam fastball, right, it's solid ride, it's solid velocity. He was able to get that ball to the top of the zone most of the time, commanded it fairly well. And I thought those 2 pitches looked good and looked better than they had really throughout his first 3 starts in the big leagues. Now, there were still 2 big issues for Young on Tuesday night, and that's why his line still wasn't great. It was 4 innings, 3 runs on 6 hits, 4 Ks, 2 walks, no homers, 71 pitches thrown by the right-hander. And the 2 big issues were, 1, he was not getting ahead of guys, and that is huge for Brandon Young. And 2, it was the command of the main off-speed pitches, the changeup and the splitter that he throws, as the game did just officially go final 10-2. The Orioles lose to the Rangers, drop game 2 of the series, and are 37-48 on the season. But Brandon Young, the stuff is solid, but he really does rely a lot on command, and he needs to pitch from ahead. If he's going to have a successful big league career, or even put together a successful stretch at some point here in 2025 in his first MLB season, he's got to do a better job of getting ahead of hitters. And that's something that Young, throughout the minor leagues, and especially even in AAA this year, he has been elite at getting ahead of hitters, has run really low walk rates throughout the high minors. It's been kind of the calling card for him as he started to knock on the door of the big leagues. And then he's gotten to the majors, and he just has not shown that command in his first 3 starts. And, 2 walks in 4 innings is not horrendous, what we saw from Young on Tuesday, but it's not as much about the walks. It's more about where he's putting himself in counts. And 11 first pitch strikes to the 19 batters he faced on Tuesday night. That is not good enough. 11 out of 19 for a guy with his kind of stuff is just not going to cut it. That rate and that number is going to have to come up for him to have success. So we will see what he can do with that, but that's going to put him in bad spots time and time again, where guys are going to be able to sit on certain pitches and he doesn't have that elite swing and miss pitch to go to, at least not now. And the other thing is, he's got those 2 off-speed pitches. He's got a changeup and a splitter. Most guys throw one or the other, and Young throws both. And I kind of like that he has 2 different ones, but the issue has been, and I think especially saw this on Tuesday night when he threw them, they've tended to, in the big leagues, morph into each other, right? If you're going to have a changeup and a splitter, that's fine, but they got to separate themselves. He threw 12 splitters and 8 changeups out of his 71 pitches, and it was really hard to differentiate between the 2 when he threw either one. That is kind of an issue. Now, in terms of velocity on the 2 pitches, the splitter averaged 86.9 miles an hour, the changeup 87.2. That's basically identical. In terms of the movement on the pitches, his changeup gets a little, or I should say his splitter gets a little more vertical break. So I guess there's that. And the changeup gets a little more horizontal break. That's kind of the differences from the pitches when you dive into the data. But just to the naked eye, and I think to a hitter, it looks like kind of the same offering. So either he needs to separate those 2 more, and maybe it's a velocity thing. They need to be separated by more. Or he needs to just pick one. It seems like the splitter has been the better of the 2 so far, and obviously a small sample size. He might need to just eventually pick the one that's better and go with that, because that, either the splitter or the changeup or both, if he sticks with them, that's going to be his out pitch, especially against left-handed hitters at the big league level. He just hasn't commanded it well in any of his starts. He can't throw the splitter where you need to, where it kind of starts at the knees, dives below the knees, and it gets a swing and miss. We've barely seen any of that from Brandon Young in the big league so far, and that's something we're going to need to see. So we'll see what he can work on. Was Zach Eflin heading to the injured list? He's presumably in the rotation for now. Chase McDermott could be on his heels to take that spot if Young continues to struggle when he gets another chance or 2. We will certainly see, but I think Young's going to make another start in 5 or 6 days from now, and we'll see if he can build off of that one. What went wrong from Tuesday night? Well, once Young came out of the game, Matt Bowman came in and just did not look like himself. Bowman was called up again on Sunday to rejoin the Orioles bullpen and give them a fresh arm. He was last DFA'd and outrighted to AAA for the second time this year back in early June, and he'd thrown 6 innings of 1-run ball with 6 Ks and no walks in AAA since he was sent down. He was on 5 days rest. He can give you length. And, the Orioles went to him in the 5th inning. Now it's his 3rd stint with the team this year in the big leagues, had a 4.57 ERA and 21 2/3 MLB innings in 2025 coming into Tuesday. And the bullpen was pretty well rested. You have multiple guys who can go multiple innings. Brandon Young, coming off the shoulder issue he dealt with a couple of weeks ago, isn't fully built back up. So that's why, only 4 innings and 71 pitches. The Orioles pulled their starter and went to Matt Bowman, hoping he could cover probably the next 2 innings and keep the Orioles close. They were trailing just 3-2 when Young came out of the game. But unfortunately, it was not the good version of Matt Bowman. Just didn't have his usual command. His stuff looked flat. And he gives up a 2-run homer, actually the first career homer for Alejandro Osuna in the 5th inning. Got out of a bases-loaded jam to keep it at just 5-2. Then even throwing 31 pitches in the 5th, he comes back out for the 6th. The Orioles are asking him to eat at least 2 innings. He gives up 2 more runs in the 6th, has to come out without even finishing that frame. Scott Blewett has to finish the inning. Just the 5th time in Bowman's career in which he's allowed at least 4 earned runs in an outing. Just the 2nd time with the Orioles, did it once last September. So the first time all year he's done that. Now, the Orioles have an off day Thursday. They have another off day on Monday. The bullpen is not really super taxed at the moment. So I don't think they'll need to quickly DFA Bowman to get another fresh arm up here. So he has a chance to at least stick in the bullpen for now. But, it's not the most important thing in the world. But I just really like Matt Bowman. I think it's a funky approach and delivery from the right side. It's rough to watch him when he struggles. That was tough. And, of course, Scott Bluette had a pretty good relief outing on Tuesday. Then Gregory Soto came in the eighth. It was 7-2. It was 10-2 when he left. He was pretty tough to watch in the eighth, just had no command as well. But we somehow got to watch Luis Vasquez, position player, pitch again. He comes in with 2 outs in the eighth, throws 1 pitch, gets a fly out. Luis Vasquez, as a position player pitcher, has thrown 3 1/3 scoreless innings this year. And also had the game-winning hit in the 11th inning on Monday night. So watch out, Shohei Ohtani. Here comes Luis Vasquez with his 35-mile-an-hour fastball, getting guys out. And the shout-out from Tuesday night's game, the shout-out goes to Gary Sanchez, who was once again the Orioles offense in this one. They scored 2 runs, and they both came off the bat of Gary Sanchez. A 2-run home run off of Jacob deGrom in the 4th inning made it a 3-2 game. Got a 99.4-mile-per-hour fastball and just smoked it on a line over the wall in left field to get the O's on the board for the first time this year against deGrom. Remember, he no-hit them into the 8th last week and just demolished the ball. And Gary Sanchez hitting .353 and just destroying baseball since coming off the IL with that wrist issue in mid-June. And if you set the minimum to 50 big league plate appearances in the month of June, Gary Sanchez was the 5th best hitter in MLB with a 200 WRC plus, meaning he was twice as good as a league average hitter in the month of June. A 59% hard hit rate, a 15% barrel rate since returning off the IL. It's just absurd what he's doing. And it just shows you more and more, like, the wrist injury was bothering Sanchez clearly all year. His 3 for 30 start at the plate before he went on the IL, all the evidence we're getting since returning was that, he was pretty much injured at the very beginning of the year and just needed to rest that wrist. And listen, the reason you signed Gary Sanchez is because you can overlook some of the defensive issues when he hits like this, and he is hitting like peak Gary Sanchez right now. Unfortunately, none of the other Orioles helped him out offensively on Tuesday night, but it is fun to see him go on this heater. But it wasn't enough of a heater as the Orioles lost 10-2 as the Rangers evened up the series at 1 game apiece on Tuesday night. But the Orioles also put together a little bit of a roster shuffle before Tuesday's game as they had somehow another catcher go on the injured list. We will talk about that and run through these roster moves coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for the extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. So before the Orioles got crushed again on Tuesday night, they made some roster moves and got some injury updates as well that I want to run through here in today's second segment. Let's start with the roster moves the Orioles made and begin with Chadwick Trump, the Orioles backup catcher who was placed on the 10-day injured list with a lower back strain. Injured it swinging in the 2nd inning of Monday's game. Remember, had to come out of the game. The Orioles had to burn the DH. Trevor Rogers had to hit twice. It was a complete mess. But Chadwick Trump becomes the 3rd Orioles catcher to join Adley Rutschman and Maverick Cantley, currently on the injured list. The Orioles obviously needed another catcher, and they selected the contract of Jacob Stallings from AAA Norfolk to come up and be the backup catcher. He pinch hit for Gary Sanchez and struck out in the 9th inning in his Orioles debut on Tuesday night. Now, Stallings, he was with the Rockies to begin the year, hit 143 in like 90 plate appearances with the Rockies, and then was released by Colorado. The Orioles signed him to a minor league deal last week when Maverick Cantley went on the injured list along with Adley, and he was 4 for 10 in Norfolk before he got the call up. But Stallings is 35 years old. He's pretty much near the end of his big league career, but he's been in the bigs for a while now. And he did have a career year last year. He's kind of completely down the middle, split time with Elias Diaz as the Rockies' two catchers last year. And Stallings had a career high 114 WRC plus in Colorado last season as a part-time catcher. So the offense could still be there. He brings good blocking, certainly better defense overall than Gary Sanchez. And, over the previous backups like Trump and Handley, just has much more MLB experience. Jacob Stallings appeared in his 564th career big league game when he came into pinch hit in the ninth on Tuesday. So he's been around for a while. He'll be a nice short-term fill-in for the Orioles until either Trump or Handley or Adley comes off the injured list next. Now, the Orioles did need to make some room with that roster move, specifically on the 40-man roster, because although Stallings straight up replaced Trump on the active roster, the Orioles had a full 40-man roster, and Stallings was not on it. So they had to make space, and they DFA'd Emmanuel Rivera to make that space. Now, Rivera had been recalled over the weekend, was kind of here for support because Jordan Westburg was still out, but not on the injured list. Westburg, again, not in the lineup, did not play on Tuesday. Hopefully we see him back in there here tonight on Wednesday. But Rivera got one AB as a pinch hitter on Monday night. He flied out to right field, and that was it. He is DFA'd on Tuesday. Now, he's already been DFA'd and cleared waivers and stayed with the Orioles twice already this year. It's probably going to happen again, so not a lot of risk with the Orioles doing this, but they had to make a DFA move to clear space on the 40-man. Now, they could have done it with someone who's, in AAA right now, but is on the 40-man roster. But Rivera just kind of made the most sense because even with Westburg out of Tuesday lineup, again, the plan is that he'll be back in the lineup tonight. You'll still have Ramon Arias and Luis Vasquez behind him as reserve infielders. You really don't need Rivera as well. So that was kind of the easiest way to clear that room. But because Rivera was on the active roster, that means you're able to call up someone else. And that was Dylan Carlson returning to the big league roster. Carlson, who actually got the start hitting ninth after returning into the Orioles lineup on Tuesday. And the Rivera move, it gives you an open roster spot. And the Orioles, since they sent Carlson down last week to get Rivera up here, they were operating with only three outfielders there for a little bit. Cowser, Mullins, Laureano, and Ryan O'Hearn technically would be considered their fourth outfielder. Not a great spot to be in if anyone gets injured. So you definitely want to get Carlson back, have him be your true fourth outfielder. He was optioned on Saturday. Usually you have to wait 10 days before you can be recalled. But the Orioles kind of gamed the system because technically the roster move they made was Trump on the IL and Carlson called up to take his spot. And you can return at any time if you are replacing an injured player going on the IL. That's what the Orioles did with Carlson and Trump to get Dylan back to the big leagues. Those were those roster moves from Tuesday. Now, there could have been further roster moves coming soon because Jorge Mateo and Cade Povich were both on rehab assignments in AAA Norfolk, seemingly getting closer and closer to the big leagues, but then both had setbacks. Mateo was rehabbing kind of the re-aggravated elbow, the surgically repaired one. He was playing in AAA rehab games, and then he left the AAA game on Sunday with a hamstring issue, and the Orioles announced on Tuesday it's a pretty severe hamstring issue. They said it's going to be 8 to 12 weeks that Mateo will be out, kind of similar to the timeline Ryan Mountcastle is currently on with his own hamstring injury. Makes it the fifth Oriole this year, Orioles major leaguer, to go down with a hamstring issue. Not really sure what's going on there, but he's been on the IL since June 10th. It's going to be further than that. Next time the Orioles do need to make a 40-man move, it'll most likely be transferring Jorge Mateo to the 60-day injured list because he's going to be out for a while here. And if he has any setbacks, he could be out for the rest of the season. I mean, we're looking at him maybe not returning till like September at this point for the O's. And this is critical time for Mateo to try and prove he still belongs on this roster. I don't think he does anyway. I don't see a lot of scenarios at this point where Jorge Mateo is an Oriole in 2026, even though the Orioles do have a club option on him for next year. But the more concerning one was Cade Povich, who went on the IL a couple of weeks ago with a hip issue. The Orioles called it very mild, and he did make a rehab start in Norfolk on Thursday and looked okay. His velos and his movement, his pitches, his windup, his delivery, it all kind of looked normal. I believe today was the day he was going to be eligible to come off the 15-day IL, so he could have been an option to start for the Orioles this week potentially. But the O's have shut down his rehab assignment. He's felt some more soreness in that same hip. They're saying the next steps are currently TBD on Cade Povich. Hopefully it's maybe just shut down for another week, then another rehab start, and he's back after the All-Star break. That would be the hope, but we will see at the moment on Povich, but he is not going to be ready to come back this week like was initially potentially planned for. Charlie Morton also had a bit of an injury scare that we talked about on yesterday's episode. He was long tossing on the field in Texas on Tuesday, so that's a good sign. He was originally supposed to start Tuesday's game against the Rangers, but the Orioles pushed him back to Friday in his return to Atlanta with what they called mild elbow tendonitis. Orioles said he'll be fine. The fact that he was throwing is a good sign, but it still worries you. And if he's not good to go, and now with Kate Povich shut down, your next options are Chase McDermott, Rolancy Contreras, and Cameron Weston in that order. And because Contreras started Tuesday night for Norfolk, if Morton can't go Friday, it's either McDermott or Weston. It would most likely be Chase McDermott, who's obviously made a few big league starts for the Orioles already this year, but their depth is kind of thinning among starting pitchers again. And some more of that is thinning because Kyle Tyler, who was a right-handed pitcher who the Orioles claimed off waivers a couple of weeks ago, kind of a starter, long reliever, who they were able to get into AAA Norfolk for some more starting pitching and just arm depth to have for the Tides. Well, when the O's had to get Emmanuel Rivera here over the weekend, they not only had to option Dylan Carlson, they also had to get somebody off the 40-man, and they ended up DFAing Kyle Tyler to make that move. Now, didn't seem like a big thing at the time. He'd only pitched a couple of times in AAA, hadn't appeared for the Orioles at the big league level yet, but he was another guy who was serving as starting pitching depth in AAA for the Orioles. He cleared waivers, and instead of accepting his assignment, he chose to become a free agent. Now, the Orioles could certainly bring him back on a minor league deal if he wants to do that, but he's no longer an option as well. So again, the options are just kind of dwindling if Charlie Morton's not okay. So we really need him to be okay and actually make that start on Friday night. We were speaking about the rehab assignments in AAA. Tyler O'Neill is continuing his rehab assignment, had his rehab moved up from AA to AAA on Tuesday, started in right field for the Tides on Tuesday night. He's been out since mid-May with a shoulder issue, already started a rehab assignment, then had it stopped because of a setback once. Almost been 2 months that he's been out now with his second IL stint of the year. But Tony Mansolino did say this week, Tyler O'Neill could return as early as the end of this week. When he does, you're looking at one of Dylan Carlson, Luis Vasquez, or Kobe Mayo being optioned to AAA to make room. It'll be interesting to see which move the Orioles make. And then finally, Grayson Rodriguez. He did throw a bullpen in the actual bullpen in Texas on Tuesday. So at least that's some good news on Grayson. We haven't gotten much news, but at least that is some good news from Tuesday. Those were all of your updates. Now what you've been promised from this episode, all those first half awards. We'll hand them out to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Now, for me, since being married last year, I share my finances with someone else. And Monarch Money has made it super, super easy to help me just stay on the same page with my wife. That's the great part of it. And they put everything in one place. It's everything is on the app. It makes it easy to manage your day-to-day. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. So we finish off today's show with the Orioles first half awards. Now, you might be thinking, Connor, the first half isn't over yet. We haven't hit the All-Star break. And the way that Major League Baseball talks about first half and second half, it is set up to be before and after the All-Star break. But every year, the All-Star break is well beyond the actual halfway point. The Orioles have played more than 81 games. Their 81st game was on Friday night in the 22-8 win over the Rays. They have now played 85 games out of 162 this season. They are past the halfway point. So I like to do the more specific to the actual numbers-wise first half of the season and give out the awards. So the stats I'm going to be referencing, they are through play on Sunday. So it actually includes 83 games. So I am also fudging it a little bit, but wanted to give out some individual, some team-wide awards, and just kind of look back on what was definitely a disappointing first half for the Orioles, but still some positives to take out of it. Now, definitely want to hear your feedback, so Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. But put in the YouTube comments here, like when you hear me give out these awards, how would you have changed your pick? Who should get the award instead? You can put them in Apple comments. You can email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. What did I do right? What did I do wrong on these awards? But here we go. We start with the Orioles first half MVP. It's got to be Ryan O'Hearn. 293, 380, 473 slash line for a 144 WRC plus through those 83 games. He's right now the leading candidate to start the All-Star game at DH. Voting ends today, Wednesday at noon, to vote him in as the starting DH. And it was kind of a rough month of June. O'Hearn hit under 200 in June, so he fell off a little bit, but he's one of the few Orioles who's actually hit with runners in scoring position, has a 129 WRC plus in those chances. It's just been, the Orioles have unlocked him, and he's gotten better and better every year since they got him back in 2023. What a story. And it needs to be capped off, at least to this point, by an all-star appearance, hopefully starting as the DH in the American League. What a cool moment that would be. And O'Hearn absolutely deserves it. So hopefully when we find out those starters on Wednesday night, Ryan O'Hearn is one of them. Considered, Jackson Holliday and Gunnar Henderson and Ramon Laureano and some other guys like that, but it's Ryan O'Hearn. Cy Young Award, I gave it to Dean Kramer. I gave it to Dean Kramer. 17 outings, 97 innings, leads the team, 4.27 ERA, 3.89 FIP, and a 1.5 Fangraphs WAR also leads the Orioles pitchers. And he's got a 2.98 ERA since the start of May. Now remember, in March and April, Dean Kramer struggles early every year. He had a 7.04 ERA. He was terrible. Since then, he's been the Orioles' best starting pitcher. He continued that with another great start against the Rays on Sunday. Yeah, there were some guys like Sugano or the recent version of Morton that I could have given it to, maybe even a reliever, but I felt like Dean Kramer deserved it. He's been really, really good since the beginning of May. My rookie of the year for this season so far is Tomoyuki Sugano. 16 starts. He's second on the team with 88 2/3 innings pitched. His 4.06 ERA is actually the lowest of all the Orioles qualifying starters right now. He would have won the Cy Young Award, too, for the Orioles had he not had a 8.15 ERA in his last 4 starts. That's been a bit of an issue. Hopefully he pitches better tonight. But still, the overall body of work he's given the Orioles as a 35-year-old rookie out of Japan has been certainly good for this starting rotation. Reliever of the year goes to Brian Baker. This was entering play Monday, so it doesn't include his huge 0 that he got in the 8th inning on Monday night, but 38 appearances leads the team, 35 1/3 innings is second, a 2.80 ERA is the best among the Oriole relievers, 32% strikeout rate to a 6% walk rate has been incredible. The changeup's better, the slider's better, the fastball's better, the command's better, everything's better from Brian Baker. This is peak Baker right now. He's gone from being almost DFA'd in spring training to really the Orioles' top 7th or 8th inning high leverage option out of their bullpen right now, is getting righties and lefties out at a high rate. He has just been awesome, and he deserves the praise that he has been getting. Biggest pleasant surprise of the first half, you got to go with Trevor Rogers. And that continued with the 5 1/3 of 2-run ball on Monday. But even in just those first 3 starts with the 1.62 ERA, the 8 scoreless against the Rangers, it's still early, but the change he's shown has been incredible. Hopefully he can keep it up because he's locked into a rotation spot at this point with all the injuries. Let's hope the changes are real for the long term, because the Orioles have him for all of next year as well. And maybe when they're back to a winning ball club, hopefully next season, Rogers can be an even bigger part of that. Biggest disappointment, I got to go with Tyler O'Neill. He's played in just 24 games. He's hit just 188. He's got just a 69 WRC plus, and he's had 2 IL stints. We knew he would get injured. He's gotten injured his entire big league career. But what he's also done, especially recently and last year with the Red Sox, is that he produces as a hitter when he's healthy. You take the couple of IL stints he's going to have as a trade-off for getting huge power and huge production. He's given the Orioles none of that stuff. Hopefully he does come back by the end of this week from this injury and can finally be healthy and start to hit. But it has not been what the Orioles thought, and he is certainly not going to opt out of that deal. So they're going to have him for the next 2 years as well. Hopefully at some point he can turn it around for the O's. A couple of individual performance awards. Best pitching performance of the year. This was probably not the Orioles' best start, but in terms of the context of this outing, I'm going to give it to Charlie Morton, June 19th in Tampa Bay. It was the night after the Orioles had blown that 8-0 second inning lead to lose to the Rays. It's like, this is over. How do you respond from that? And Charlie Morton goes out there and gives him 6 innings of 1-run ball, 6 hits, 7 Ks, and no walks. His first start of the year with 0 walks. It's just the timing of the game, the continued Charlie Morton resurgence, who's been, fantastic over the past 6 weeks or so, really been, you could argue, the Orioles' best starting pitcher in that time. To go out there and throw that game after what happened the night before, I thought was context-wise the best pitching performance. There's been better, right? You had the 8 scoreless from Rogers. You've had guys like Kramer and Morton and other times strike out 10 batters, but just for what it meant to this team, I gave that one to Charlie Morton. And the best hitting performance really just happened. Friday night, June 27th, Gary Sanchez against the Rays. He goes 4 for 6 with a double, a homer, a walk, 4 ribbies, and 5 hard hit balls, continuing Gary's red hot tear coming off the injured list, just massacring the Rays in that 22-8 Orioles win. You got to shout out Gary Sanchez for what he's been able to do, and specifically in that huge game for not just him, but the Orioles scoring 22 runs for the first time in 25 years. Now, I got a couple of team superlatives to hand out as well before we get out of here on this episode. Let's start with the best win. It seems like the Orioles have been alternating between best win and worst loss of the year like every day over the past couple of weeks. Feels like it's happened in this Rangers series. Incredible 11-inning win on Monday. Terrible blowout loss on Tuesday. Rays series. Amazing 22-run output win on Friday. Lifeless blowout loss on Saturday. Like, it's just been back and forth. But I took the best win as June 20th in New York against the Yankees. The O's beat the Bronx Bombers 5-3. This was right after that crazy Rays series where they had used up so much pitching, the bullpen, the rotation, all in a bad spot. They get just 3 2/3 from Sugano in this game. How are they going to get through it against this Yankee offense with this bullpen? They're facing Max Fried, who's probably been the second best lefty in baseball behind Tarek Skubal this year. The Orioles have had so many struggles against left-handed pitching. And what do? They score 3 runs off Fried. They get 2 late runs off Luke Weaver, one of the best relievers in baseball. And they get 5 1/3 scoreless from the bullpen, including a scoreless 7th and 8th inning from Scott Blewett, who'd basically been kind of their long man mop-up guy until that point, but was forced into high leverage spots because the Orioles, they were so taxed in the bullpen, they just didn't have anybody else to throw. I mean, that was an incredible win. It's unfortunate the O's ended up losing that series. They were just a couple outs away from winning it on Sunday, but that was an incredible win on Friday night. Their best series of the year, we got to go with one of their sweeps, and I'll take the one over the best team. June 3rd through the 5th in Seattle, the Orioles win all 3 games against the Mariners. It's the best of their 3 sweeps this year. They allowed only a total of 6 runs in those 3 victories. And the Orioles rotation, which was Sugano, Povich, and Eflin in that series. Now, 2 of those guys now struggling, 2 of those guys now on the IL and 1 struggling mightily. So this was about a month ago, and how things change. But those 3 combined to go 18 1/3 innings, 17 hits, 6 earned runs, 17 strikeouts to 2 walks in that 3-game series. And it was a kind of a hot Mariners team at that point that the O's cooled off. That was definitely their most impressive 3-game series of the year. Now, their worst loss, we have plenty to choose from, but I said it was at the time. I'm going to stick with it. It's June 18th in Tampa Bay. Rays 12, Orioles 8. The O's open up an 8-0 lead in the top of the 2nd inning and lose the game 12-8, give up 12 unanswered runs to blow a gigantic lead. Just a crushing loss. I mean, it's crazy that the Orioles won the next 2 games against the Rays and the Yankees after losing that game like that, but just an unbelievable way to lose a game. Yeah, the Orioles did lose a game 24-2 earlier this year. I still think blowing that lead against the Rays was worse. And their worst series of the year, it's got to be May 16th through the 18th. The Orioles were swept at home by the lowly Washington Nationals. Started on Friday, which was a candidate for their worst loss of the year. Lost 4-3 on Friday and left 15 men on base. It was their biggest runners in scoring position debacle of the year. And it was the final game Brandon Hyde managed for the Orioles. The next morning, he was fired as Orioles manager. Then they came in from that and lost 10-6 on Saturday and lost 10-4, got blown out both days, Saturday, Sunday, to get swept in the series. That came in the middle of their season-high 8-game losing streak back in May. It was a disastrous series, swept by a bad team. You fire your manager. Just all things going poorly in that series. I think even though there's been some bad series and some bad games, that was clearly, to me, the worst series of the year. But let me know, what did I get right? What did I get wrong among all these Orioles first half awards and superlatives? Let me know via email. Let me know here in the Locked On Orioles YouTube comment section. I'd like to hear your thoughts on all of these. But that'll do it for today's episode. We are back tomorrow. We'll be recapping Game 3 between the Orioles and the Rangers. O's going for the series win in the rubber match, 8:05 on Masson. Tomoyuki Sugano, as I mentioned, 8.15 ERA in his past 4 starts. Hopefully he can pull it together tonight. He will be facing Nathan Eovaldi, who has been unbelievable for Texas this year. He's got a 1.87 ERA in 13 starts. He just came off the IL and threw only 3 innings and allowed 3 runs against Seattle last week. So we'll see how much length he's going to be given because he missed a month on the injured list. But when he's been out there, he's been awesome this year. I really wanted him to be an Oriole. He is not. I've wanted him to be an Oriole for a while. He is not. Hopefully he doesn't make the Orioles pay for it in tonight's game. And hopefully Jordan Westberg is back in the lineup in tonight's game as well. And then I will be back tomorrow again to recap the final game between the O's and the Rangers and talk a little bit about some interesting minor league guys. The 2 Orioles have been named to play in the Futures game. We'll talk about them. And there's a hitter in AAA. It's not Samuel Basayo. It's not even Dylan Beavers, who's been amazing. There's an interesting kind of non-prospect hitter in AAA I've really been wanting to talk about. We might jump into the story of Jeremiah Jackson coming up on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.